I'm Brooke, 29, and I never thought my own stepsister would try to steal my $400,000 inheritance. Tiffany and I had a complicated relationship since our parents married when I was 12. Despite her constant manipulation, I always extended my hand to help, hoping she'd eventually see me as family. Then came that day when she gave me a brand new phone as a peace offering. If only she knew I was 2 steps ahead of her little scheme. Before I dive into this wild story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to outsmart someone who underestimated you. Growing up, I had what most would call a typical middle-class American childhood. We lived in a suburban neighborhood in Pennsylvania with decent schools and friendly neighbors. My parents, though not wealthy, provided everything I needed. Life was pretty normal until I turned 10, when my parents sat me down for the talk. Not that talk, the we don't love each other anymore talk. The divorce wasn't particularly messy, but it shattered my idea of what family meant. Dad moved out and bought a small apartment across town. Mom kept our family home, and I split my time between them. It was an adjustment, but I was adapting. Then, 2 years later, Dad dropped another bombshell. He was getting remarried to Karen, a woman he'd met at his new job. And she had a daughter, Tiffany. I still remember meeting them for the first time. Karen seemed nice enough, if a bit too eager to win me over with forced smiles and awkward hugs. But Tiffany? She sized me up immediately, her eyes calculating as she examined my clothes, my hair, everything about me. She was 10 then, 2 years younger than me, but there was something unnervingly adult in her gaze. "This is your new sister," Dad had announced enthusiastically. Tiffany had smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Stepsister," she corrected, emphasizing the step part. That first dinner together set the tone for our relationship. While the adults chatted happily, Tiffany accidentally spilled soda on my favorite jeans. When I went to clean up, I returned to find her sitting in my seat, right next to Dad. It seemed innocent enough, but I caught the smirk she tried to hide. This wasn't going to be the Brady Bunch. As the years went by, Tiffany perfected the art of manipulation. She became the master of the two-faced act, angel in front of our parents, devil when they weren't looking. She'd borrow my things without asking and return them damaged, if at all. When I confronted her, she'd turn on the waterworks, and somehow I'd end up being the bad guy. "Brooke, you need to be more understanding," Dad would say. Tiffany's still adjusting. She was still adjusting for years, apparently. Despite everything, I tried to build a relationship with her. When she struggled with math in high school, I spent hours tutoring her. When she needed help with college applications, I proofread her essays. When she crashed her first car, I drove her to work for weeks. I lent her money for concert tickets, covered for her when she broke curfew, and defended her when she got into trouble. The thanks I got? Mockery behind my back, rumors spread to my friends, and a convenient case of amnesia whenever I needed a favor in return. "Why do you keep helping her?" my best friend Allison asked once. "She treats you like garbage." I didn't have a good answer. Maybe I was trying to win Dad's approval. Maybe I was hoping Tiffany would eventually reciprocate. Or maybe I was just too nice for my own good. My grandmother, my mom's mother, saw through Tiffany immediately. Grandma Rose was sharp as a tack well into her 80s. "That girl's got a calculator where her heart should be," she told me once. "Don't trust her further than you can throw her." Grandma Rose and I had always been close. She taught me to bake, to garden, to stand up for myself. More importantly, she taught me the value of hard work and saving money. Every birthday and Christmas, she'd give me savings bonds instead of toys. "For your future," she'd say with a wink. When she passed away 3 years ago, she left me her life savings, $350,000. It was a shock to everyone, especially Tiffany. "Why does she get all that money?" she had demanded at the reading of the will. "We're family too." The thing is, Grandma Rose had never considered them family. She'd met Tiffany and Karen exactly 3 times, and each time, Tiffany had made zero effort to connect with her. I invested most of the inheritance wisely, following the financial literacy Grandma had instilled in me. Meanwhile, I built my career as a software developer at a growing tech company. Between my salary, bonuses, and the growing investments, my net worth had recently crossed the $400,000 mark. Tiffany, on the other hand, had majored in communications but never seemed to find a job that suited her. She'd bounce between positions, always quitting because of toxic workplaces or unappreciative bosses. She lived in a nice apartment she couldn't afford and drove a luxury car with payments that ate half her income. The contrast between our financial situations only seemed to fuel her resentment toward me. "You got lucky," she'd say, dismissing my hard work and careful planning. "Some people don't have rich grandmas to bail them out." I'd bite my tongue, resisting the urge to point out that her designer wardrobe and frequent spa days suggested she wasn't exactly living in poverty. Besides, I'd offered to help her set up a budget and investment plan multiple times. She always declined. "I don't need financial advice from Miss Perfect," she'd sneer. By my late 20s, I had a good job, a modest but comfortable apartment, and solid friendships. I dated occasionally, but hadn't found the one yet. Overall, life was good, except for the Tiffany-shaped cloud that still hung over family gatherings. I still held out hope that someday, somehow, we might become real sisters. How naive I was. Last year, things in my professional life really started coming together. After 3 years at the same company, I was promoted to senior developer with a substantial salary increase. My investments from grandma's inheritance were performing well above market average, thanks to some lucky tech stock picks and a small stake in a friend's startup that was beginning to take off. Financially, I was in the best position of my life. Tiffany's situation was heading in the opposite direction. She had been working at a marketing firm for about 8 months, a record for her, when she was suddenly let go in a company-wide restructuring. At least, that's what she told everyone. I later found out from a mutual acquaintance that she'd been fired for repeatedly missing deadlines and showing up late. It wasn't long before the texts started coming in. "Hey sis, can I borrow $200 until Friday? Car payment is due." I sent the money. Friday came and went without any mention of repayment. 2 weeks later, emergency. Need $350 for rent or I'll get evicted. I transferred the money immediately, worried about her potentially losing her apartment. The pattern continued. $75 for groceries, though her Instagram showed her at an expensive sushi restaurant that same night. $500 for medical bills, which I later discovered was actually for a cosmetic procedure. $150 here, $300 there. The requests were becoming more frequent and for larger amounts. Each time, I told myself it was the last time. Each time, I gave in when the next request came. The money itself wasn't the issue. I could afford it. It was the principle, the way she seemed to expect it, as if my financial support was her birthright. Things came to a head at Dad and Karen's anniversary dinner last spring. The whole extended family gathered at an upscale restaurant. I'd just finished telling everyone about my promotion when Tiffany interrupted. "Well, not everyone gets to sit in an air-conditioned office all day playing with computers," she said loudly. "Some of us have to struggle in the real world." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. "I'm sure Brooke works very hard," my aunt said diplomatically. "Oh, please." Tiffany rolled her eyes. "She got lucky with Grandma's money and now thinks she's better than everyone. Meanwhile, she won't even help her own sister during tough times." I nearly choked on my water. "Won't help? Tiffany, I've lent you over $5,000 in the past few months alone." "Lent?" She laughed bitterly. "So, now you're keeping score?" "Real sisters don't keep score. Real sisters pay back what they borrow," I countered, feeling my cheeks burn. "Girls, please," Dad interjected. "This isn't the time or place." "You're right, Daddy," Tiffany said sweetly, instantly transforming back into Daddy's little girl. "I'm sorry for bringing up Brooke's stinginess at your special dinner." I sat there, stunned by her audacity and hurt by Dad's failure to correct her version of events. The rest of the meal passed in a blur of forced small talk and avoided eye contact. That night, Allison called to check in after I texted her about the disaster dinner. "This has to stop, Brooke," she said firmly. "She's using you, and it's only getting worse." "I know," I admitted. "But she's family. Family doesn't treat family like an ATM. And they definitely don't publicly humiliate them." Deep down, I knew she was right. 2 days later, when Tiffany texted asking for $2,000 to cover car repairs, I finally found my backbone. "I'm sorry, but I can't keep lending you money that never gets repaid," I wrote back. "I'm happy to help you look for job opportunities or create a budget, but no more loans." The response was immediate and vicious. Wow, show your true colors, why don't you? After everything I've done for you. You think you're so much better than me because of your fancy job and your dead grandma's money. You'll regret this. Family remembers who was there when it counted. I didn't respond, but her words stung. Had I done the right thing? Was I being selfish? The guilt gnawed at me, but I stood firm in my decision. For the next few weeks, Tiffany alternated between icy silence and passive-aggressive social media posts about fake family and selfish people. She skipped Sunday dinner at Dad's twice, and when she did show up, she acted as if I didn't exist. Dad pulled me aside after one particularly tense meal. Can't you just help her out, Brooke? She's really struggling. I've been helping her for years, Dad, I said, trying to keep the frustration from my voice. But there's a difference between helping and enabling. He sighed, looking suddenly older than his 55 years. She's always been more sensitive than you. Not as independent. Translation. Tiffany needs more coddling, more allowances, more slack. The same old story. I love you both, he continued. I just want peace in the family. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak without saying something I'd regret. The message was clear. Keeping Tiffany happy was more important than addressing her behavior. After that conversation, I pulled back from family gatherings for a while, using work as an excuse. I needed space to clear my head and strengthen my resolve. During this time, I confided in a wider circle of friends about the situation, and their unanimous support helped validate my feelings. Your stepsister sounds like a narcissist, my coworker Jake said during lunch one day. My cousin's the same way. They never change because they never think they're the problem. His words resonated with me. For years, I'd been hoping Tiffany would mature, would recognize her toxic behavior patterns, and work to change them. But what if that was never going to happen? What if this was who she was, fundamentally? It was a depressing thought, but also strangely liberating. If I accepted that Tiffany wouldn't change, then I could focus on changing the one thing I could control. My response to her. Little did I know, Tiffany was already planning her next move, one that would test my newfound resolve in ways I never could have imagined. After nearly a month of minimal contact, I was surprised to get a text from Tiffany asking if she could come over to talk. Her message seemed uncharacteristically humble. I've been doing some thinking and I owe you an apology. Can I stop by tomorrow evening? I want to clear the air. I was skeptical, but also hopeful. Maybe the distance had given her perspective. Maybe she finally realized how her behavior had affected our relationship. Against my better judgment, I agreed. When she arrived at my apartment the next evening, I barely recognized her. Gone was the usual perfectly styled hair and designer outfit. Instead, she wore minimal makeup, a simple sweater, and jeans. She even brought a homemade casserole, my favorite comfort food from childhood. I know I've been awful to you, she said, eyes downcast as we sat on my couch. There's no excuse for it. You've always been there for me, and I've taken advantage of that. I sat in stunned silence, waiting for the other shoe to drop. The truth is, she continued, I've been jealous. You've always had everything together, good grades, great job, financial stability. It made me feel inadequate. A tear slid down her cheek, and despite my reservations, I felt my heart softening. This seemed like genuine remorse. I've started therapy, she added, and I'm interviewing for a new job next week. I want to do better, be better. That's really great, Tiffany, I said cautiously. I'm proud of you for taking those steps. I brought you something, she said, reaching into her bag. It's not much, but I wanted to show you I'm serious about making amends. She handed me a sleek box containing the latest iPhone model, still sealed in its packaging. Tiffany, I can't accept this, I said immediately. These cost a fortune. Please, she insisted. I got it through my friend who works at the carrier store. Employee discount. Besides, I noticed your current phone is pretty beat up. She wasn't wrong. My 3-year-old phone had a cracked screen and a battery that barely lasted half a day. This is too much, I protested. It's the least I can do after everything, she said, her eyes welling up again. Please, Brooke. Let me do this one thing for you. Against my better judgment, I accepted the gift. We spent the rest of the evening catching up, and for the first time in years, it felt like we were actually connecting. She asked thoughtful questions about my job and seemed genuinely interested in my life. By the time she left, I was cautiously optimistic about our relationship. The next morning, I opened the phone box. Everything looked legitimate: the packaging, the accessories, the warranty cards. Tiffany had even gone the extra mile and set it up for me already. All my apps were pre-installed, and she'd transferred my contacts and photos. "Just turn it on and enter your Apple ID," read her text. "Everything else is good to go." It was surprisingly thoughtful. Still, something felt off. Tiffany had never been technologically inclined. How had she managed all this setup? And since when did she have friends at the phone carrier? I pushed the thoughts aside. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe this really was her attempt at turning over a new leaf. Over the next few days, I used the new phone for basic functions: calls, texts, social media. I noticed it would sometimes get unusually hot, even when I wasn't using it heavily. The battery drained faster than expected for a brand new device. Occasionally, I'd catch the screen lighting up briefly when I wasn't touching it. Probably just notifications, I told myself, though I couldn't help feeling uneasy. What really made me pause was when I opened my banking app to pay some bills. The phone froze for a second, then asked for my password again, which it hadn't done before. I closed the app without entering it, suddenly uncomfortable. That weekend, I attended a work conference where one of the speakers was a cybersecurity expert discussing digital privacy. During the networking session afterward, I found myself chatting with him about general phone security. "New phones should never overheat or drain quickly," he said when I casually mentioned my observations. "That's often a sign of background processes running without your knowledge." "What kind of background processes?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "Could be poorly optimized apps, or—" He hesitated. "In my line of work, we often see it with spyware or keyloggers." My blood ran cold. How would someone get spyware on a phone? "Easiest way is to have physical access to the device before the user sets it up," he explained. "Pre-install the software, configure it to run invisibly, then give the phone to the target. Most people never suspect a thing." I must have looked as alarmed as I felt because he quickly added, "I'm not saying that's what's happening with your phone, but if you're concerned, I'd be happy to take a look at it." I thanked him and took his business card, my mind racing. Was I being paranoid, or had Tiffany's sudden generosity been part of a scheme? The timing was suspicious. Right after I cut her off financially, she gives me an expensive gift and conveniently presets it up. The next day, I called Ryan, the cybersecurity expert, and arranged to meet at a coffee shop. I watched anxiously as he connected my phone to his laptop and ran several diagnostic programs. His expression grew increasingly serious as he scrolled through the results. "I don't want to alarm you," he said finally, "but there's definitely spyware on this device. Sophisticated stuff, too." My stomach dropped. "What exactly can it do?" "Pretty much everything," he said grimly. "Record keystrokes, access your camera and microphone remotely, view your screen in real time, track your location. It's particularly focused on capturing financial app data, banking apps, investment platforms, payment services." The pieces clicked into place. Tiffany wasn't after small loans anymore. She was going for the entire $400,000. "Can you remove it?" I asked. Ryan shook his head. "I wouldn't trust this device again. The malware is deeply embedded. Your best bet is to get a new phone completely." I nodded, my mind already formulating a plan. "Actually, can you leave the spyware active but help me secure my actual accounts?" He looked surprised. "You want to keep using a compromised phone?" "Just for a little while," I said. "I need to understand exactly what's happening here." Over the next few days, with Ryan's help, I executed a careful plan. I didn't confront Tiffany. I didn't stop using the phone. Instead, I opened a new bank account at a different institution and transferred most of my money there, using my laptop on a secure network. I left about $5,000 in my original account, enough to look legitimate but not catastrophic if stolen. The brilliant part? I named the new account almost identically to my original one, with just a single letter difference that would be easy to miss if someone was viewing it through spyware. To someone quickly glancing at screenshots, it would look like the same account. Meanwhile, I created a digital trail that would be irresistible to Tiffany. I researched high-yield savings accounts on the compromised phone. I left my banking app open while typing in my password. I even had fake text conversations with my financial advisor about consolidating all my investments into my main account for simplicity. All the while, I monitored the decoy account, waiting to see if Tiffany would take the bait. As the days passed, I became increasingly aware of my phone's strange behavior. Sometimes the camera light would flicker briefly. Occasionally, apps would open on their own before quickly closing again. Once, I even heard a faint playback of my own voice when no calls or recordings were active. Each incident confirmed what I already knew. Someone was actively monitoring my device. Tiffany's behavior changed too. She texted more frequently, asking seemingly innocent questions about my work schedule or weekend plans. She suggested meeting for coffee near my bank. She even asked if I ever worried about online banking security, a topic she'd never shown interest in before. "Just read this scary article about hackers," her text read. "Do you use two-factor authentication for your accounts? I'm thinking of setting it up for mine." I played along, providing vague answers while continuing my charade of financial naivety on the compromised phone. 2 weeks after receiving the phone, I attended a tech industry mixer where, by chance, I ran into Megan, a cybersecurity specialist I'd met at a previous networking event. After catching up, I cautiously broached my situation. Hypothetically, I began, if someone installed spyware on your phone to access your bank accounts, how exactly would they execute the theft? Megan raised an eyebrow but answered professionally. Most banking spyware captures login credentials, then the attacker waits for the perfect opportunity. They need to know when you won't notice the money missing immediately, like during a vacation or busy work period. And they transfer the money where? I pressed. Usually to multiple temporary accounts in quick succession to make it harder to trace. Some sophisticated operations use overseas accounts or cryptocurrency to further obscure the trail. This information confirmed my suspicions and helped me refine my strategy. I needed to create the perfect opportunity for Tiffany to make her move. The next day, I called my boss and requested time off for the following week, making sure to have the conversation within earshot of my compromised phone. I then proceeded to make hotel reservations and flight bookings for a digital detox retreat, where I would supposedly have no internet access. I even packed a suitcase and left it visibly in my apartment when Tiffany dropped by unexpectedly. "A week with no internet?" she asked, feigning disbelief. "I could never do that." "I need the break," I replied. "No emails, no calls, no checking accounts or social media. Just nature and peace." "Well, have fun," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'll keep an eye on your place while you're gone." I had no doubt she would. The day before my fake departure, I visited Ryan again, bringing both my compromised phone and my secure laptop. "I need to see exactly what data is being transmitted," I explained. "Can we monitor the spyware's outgoing communications?" Ryan looked uncomfortable but intrigued. "This is getting into some ethically gray areas. Are you sure you don't want to just report this to the police?" "Not yet," I said firmly. "I need concrete proof first." After some persuasion, Ryan agreed to help. He set up a monitoring system that would log all the data being sent from my phone without alerting the spyware that it was being watched. "Based on the transmission patterns, the person checking your phone is doing so multiple times daily," Ryan noted, showing me the logs. "They're particularly interested in your banking app and investment accounts." "Can you tell where the data is going?" I asked. "To an IP address associated with a residential internet service," he confirmed. "I can't give you the exact location without a warrant, but it's definitely in your metropolitan area." That was all the confirmation I needed. The next morning, I made a show of leaving for my retreat, taking a small overnight bag, but leaving the compromised phone in my apartment, ostensibly forgotten in my rush. I told everyone I'd be unreachable for a week. In reality, I checked into a hotel just 20 minutes from my apartment. Using my laptop and a new burner phone, I monitored the decoy bank account hourly. For 2 days, nothing happened. On the third day, at 2:17 a.m., I received the alert I'd been waiting for. Someone had logged into my decoy account. I watched in real time as they navigated through the interface, checked the balance, and began setting up a transfer. The transfer was for $398,500, almost everything in what they believed was my main account. The destination was an unfamiliar bank account that I suspected was just the first hop in a series of planned transfers. I let the transaction attempt proceed, knowing it would ultimately fail due to transfer limits I'd previously established. Sure enough, the system rejected the large transfer, but a subsequent attempt to move $25,000, just under my daily limit, went through. I had her. The money was now sitting in what was clearly a temporary holding account. Thanks to my advance warning to my bank's fraud department, they were monitoring the situation and ready to reverse any transactions at my signal. All I needed now was to confront Tiffany and get her to incriminate herself. I texted her from my new burner phone. Emergency. Need to talk ASAP. Meet at my apartment in an hour. Her response came quickly. It's 3 a.m. What's wrong? Can't explain by text. It's about my bank account. Something's wrong. 20 minutes later, she was knocking at my door, looking surprisingly alert for the middle of the night. Her expression when she saw me, clearly not at a nature retreat, was a mixture of shock and poorly concealed panic. I thought you were away, she stammered. Clearly, I replied coldly, letting her in. We need to talk about my bank account. Tiffany stood in my living room, still wearing her pajamas with a hastily thrown-on jacket, looking like she was trying to decide between fight or flight. Her eyes darted to the coffee table where the compromised phone sat, its screen occasionally lighting up with notifications. What about your bank account? She asked, her voice carefully controlled. I thought you were on some retreat. That's what I wanted everyone to think, I said, watching her face closely. Including the person who's been spying on my phone and just tried to steal nearly $400,000 from my account. Her expression flickered between emotions, shock, indignation, and something darker, before settling on wide-eyed innocence. That's terrible. Someone tried to rob you? That's why you came back early. I almost had to admire her commitment to the act. Almost. I never left, Tiffany. It was a trap and you walked right into it. What are you talking about? She crossed her arms defensively. Why would you set a trap? And why are you looking at me like that? I gestured to the couch. Sit down. This might take a while. She remained standing. I think I should go. You're clearly upset and not making sense. The phone you gave me, I interrupted, has sophisticated spyware installed. It's been tracking everything I do, recording my passwords, monitoring my accounts, even activating the microphone and camera without my knowledge. Her face paled slightly, but she rallied quickly. That's crazy. I got that phone from the store. If there's something wrong with it, take it back. You mean take it back to your friend at the carrier store? The one who doesn't exist. I pulled out my laptop and opened it. I had the phone analyzed by a cybersecurity expert. Want to see the logs? I turned the screen toward her, showing the detailed analysis Ryan had prepared. Lines of code, timestamps, and data transmission records filled the screen. This is the data being sent from my phone to an external server. And look at this timestamp, 2:17 a.m. tonight. That's when someone accessed my banking app and tried to transfer almost $400,000. Tiffany's confidence visibly wavered. She sank onto the couch, still maintaining her innocence, but with less conviction. I don't understand any of this tech stuff. Maybe the phone was hacked after I gave it to you. The spyware was installed before the phone was ever in my possession, I countered. And strangely, the data is being transmitted to an IP address associated with your neighborhood. Her eyes narrowed slightly. I could almost see her calculating her next move. Even if what you're saying is true, which I don't believe for a second, you can't prove I had anything to do with it. I let the silence stretch between us, watching her squirm. Then I reached for my burner phone and played a recording. Target account located. Balance $403,500. Proceeding with transfer as discussed. It was Tiffany's voice, clear as day, apparently talking to someone on the phone while executing the theft. Her face transformed, shock giving way to anger. You've been recording me? That's illegal. Not as illegal as theft, identity fraud, and cybercrime. I replied calmly. Besides, I didn't record you. You recorded yourself. The spyware has a bug. It occasionally activates the microphone on both ends of the connection. You've been unknowingly creating evidence against yourself for weeks. This was a bluff. The recording was actually a simulation Ryan had created using publicly available samples of Tiffany's voice from her social media videos. But she didn't know that. Tiffany's composure cracked. Her face flushed with anger, and she stood up abruptly. Fine. So, what if I did? That money should have been mine anyway, she spat. Grandma Rose only left it to you because you played the perfect granddaughter. Baking cookies and gardening with her, it was all so fake. It wasn't fake, I said quietly. I loved her. And I didn't deserve anything, she demanded. I'm family too. But no, she left everything to her precious Brooke. Do you have any idea what it's like living in your shadow? Perfect Brooke with her perfect job and perfect life and perfect inheritance. Her resentment poured out like a burst dam. Years of jealousy and entitlement spilled into my living room as she paced back and forth. You've been lending me pocket change when you're sitting on a fortune. What's 400,000 to you? You'd probably just waste it on some boring investment account anyway. So you thought you'd steal it? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. I deserved it more than you, she insisted. And it was so easy. You're so trusting, so eager to believe. I wanted to reconcile. One tearful apology and a fancy gift, and you welcomed me right back in. She laughed then, a harsh sound devoid of humor. You know what the best part is? I used your own money to buy that phone. Remember the car repair loan you refused? I got the cash from Dad instead. So technically, you paid for the tool of your own downfall. Her smug expression made my blood boil, but I maintained my composure. This was exactly what I needed, a full confession. Well, congratulations on your master plan, I said. There's just one small problem. What's that? She asked, still looking triumphant. Did you actually check the account name when you were transferring the money? Confusion crossed her face. What are you talking about? Of course I did. It was your account, Brooke Miller, with your bank. Look closer, I said, turning my laptop to show her the transaction details. The account you emptied is Brooke Miller, with an not it. It's a decoy account I set up 2 weeks ago. The blood drained from her face as she stared at the screen. The real money, I continued, all $403,500 of it, is safe in an entirely different bank. What you stole was $25,000 from an account I created specifically to catch you. You're lying, she whispered, but the uncertainty in her voice betrayed her. Check for yourself, I offered, pushing the laptop toward her. And while you're at it, you might want to know that the bank's fraud department has been monitoring that account since I opened it. They've already flagged the transaction and frozen the receiving account. The police have been notified. Tiffany's face contorted with rage. She lunged for her purse and pulled out her phone. You think you're so smart? I recorded everything too. I'll delete all the evidence right now. Go ahead, I said calmly. It won't matter. This entire conversation has been recorded as well. I pointed to the small camera hidden on my bookshelf, its red light blinking steadily. And I've already sent copies of all the evidence to my lawyer. She stared at me, mouth open, the reality of her situation finally sinking in. You set me up, she said in disbelief. No, Tiffany. You set yourself up. I just made sure you'd face the consequences for once in your life. The hours following our confrontation were a blur of police statements, evidence submissions, and phone calls. Tiffany was taken to the police station for questioning, her initial bravado crumbling as the gravity of her situation became clear. Identity theft, bank fraud, illegal surveillance, and attempted grand larceny. The charges mounted quickly. I felt strangely numb as I provided my statement to the detectives. One of them, a veteran officer with kind eyes, placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Family betrayal is the hardest kind, she said quietly. Don't beat yourself up for not seeing it sooner. Those words broke something in me, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, I allowed myself to cry. Not for the money, that was safe, but for the relationship I'd spent years trying to build on a foundation that had never existed. My phone rang incessantly that day, Dad, Karen, mutual friends who'd somehow already heard. I let most calls go to voicemail, needing time to process. When I finally spoke to Dad that evening, his voice was hollow with shock. Tell me this is some kind of mistake, he pleaded. Tiffany says it's all a misunderstanding. It's not, Dad, I said wearily. I have video evidence, the spyware analysis, the bank records. She admitted everything to my face. The silence on his end spoke volumes. She needs help, I continued softly. Real help, not more enabling. Karen's devastated, he said, avoiding my point. She's at the police station now, trying to arrange bail. Of course she was. The pattern continued. Tiffany creates a problem, family rushes to shield her from consequences. Dad, she tried to steal my entire savings. She's been planning this for months. I know, he sighed heavily. How did we get here? Where did we go wrong with her? There was no simple answer to that question. Nature, nurture, the complex dynamics of our blended family, all had played a part in creating the perfect storm that was Tiffany. The legal process moved forward with surprising speed. The evidence was overwhelming, and despite her initial denials, Tiffany eventually accepted a plea deal rather than risk a trial. She received 3 years probation, mandatory counseling, and was ordered to pay restitution, both for the money she'd attempted to steal and my legal expenses. The family fractured along predictable lines. Karen blamed me for entrapping her daughter. Dad tried desperately to play peacemaker while avoiding taking a firm stance. Extended family members chose sides. Holiday gatherings became logistical nightmares, and the tension seeped into every interaction. I filed for a restraining order against Tiffany, which was granted without contest. The physical distance provided some relief, but the emotional fallout was harder to contain. You did the right thing, Allison assured me over wine one evening, a month after the confrontation. She's a grown woman who made her choices. This isn't on you. Logically, I knew she was right. But decades of family conditioning had left their mark. The guilt crept in during quiet moments. Could I have handled it differently? Was there another way? The most unexpected support came from Ryan, the cybersecurity expert who'd helped uncover Tiffany's scheme. What had started as professional assistance evolved into coffee meetings to discuss the case, then dinners that had nothing to do with cybercrime at all. His straight-talking nature and ethical backbone provided an anchor during the chaos. What you're feeling is normal, he told me during one particularly difficult evening. It's called betrayal trauma. It literally rewires your brain, makes you question your judgment and relationships. Will it ever go away? I asked. It gets better, he promised. But it changes you. Sometimes for the better if you let it. As the months passed, I discovered he was right. The experience had fundamentally altered how I viewed relationships and trust. I became more cautious, yes, but also more discerning. I began to recognize the patterns I'd ignored for years, not just with Tiffany, but in other relationships where I'd allowed myself to be undervalued. 3 months after the arrest, I received an unexpected letter. It was from Tiffany, handwritten from the outpatient treatment facility she was required to attend as part of her probation. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness, it began. I don't deserve that, and we both know it. I'm writing because my therapist says I need to take responsibility for my actions without excuses or justifications. The letter continued for several pages, an unflinching account of her resentment, her sense of entitlement, her deliberate manipulation of my trust. There were no pleas for reconciliation, no attempts to minimize what she'd done. It was, perhaps for the first time in our relationship, completely honest. I don't expect a response, she concluded. I just needed you to know that I understand what I did, and I'll have to live with that knowledge for the rest of my life. I read the letter several times, searching for the manipulation between the lines, the hidden agenda. But for once, there didn't seem to be one. I filed it away, not ready to respond but unwilling to discard this small evidence of possible growth. Meanwhile, the investigation into the spyware led to an unexpected discovery. Tiffany hadn't been working alone. Her boyfriend, someone she'd never introduced to the family, was a low-level IT technician with a history of similar scams. He'd provided the technical expertise while she supplied the personal information needed to make the scheme work. He, too, was charged and eventually sentenced to actual jail time due to prior offenses. This revelation added another layer of betrayal. Tiffany had not only targeted me but had brought an accomplice into her plot, sharing intimate details of my life with a stranger who wished me harm. 6 months after the incident, I was finally starting to regain my footing. I'd changed apartments, gotten a new job at a company with better security protocols, and established firm boundaries with the remaining family members who still wanted relationships with both Tiffany and me. Most importantly, I'd stopped apologizing for protecting myself. The old Brooke would have minimized the incident to keep the peace, would have shouldered blame that wasn't hers to carry. The new Brooke understood her worth and refused to compromise it for anyone, even family. You seem different, Dad remarked during a rare one-on-one lunch. More confident. I suggested. He nodded slowly. I was going to say harder, but confident works too. Not harder, I corrected gently. Just clearer about what I deserve. He looked down at his plate. Karen wants us all to try family therapy. She thinks we could work through this, maybe even reconcile eventually. I took a sip of water, considering my words carefully. I'm open to therapy for you and me, Dad. But I need more time before I can be in the same room with Tiffany again. And reconciliation isn't on the table right now. He seemed disappointed but nodded. I understand. For what it's worth, I'm proud of how you've handled all this. You've shown incredible strength. Coming from Dad, who had spent years prioritizing Tiffany's feelings over mine, this acknowledgement meant more than I could express. Thanks, Dad, I said simply. That means a lot. As I drove home from lunch, I reflected on how this experience had changed me. The betrayal had been devastating, but it had also freed me from patterns I might have otherwise continued for decades. Sometimes it takes losing something to realize it wasn't worth having in the first place. 6 months turned into a year, and slowly, I rebuilt my life. Not just the external parts, the new apartment, the job, the daily routines, but the internal landscape that had been so thoroughly shaken. Trust, once given freely, now had to be earned. Boundaries, once permeable, stood firm. And my own needs, once subordinated to family peace, took their rightful place as priorities. I used part of my savings to put a down payment on a small townhouse in a quiet neighborhood across town. After years of renting, having a place that was truly mine felt like planting a flag on new territory. I painted the walls colors I loved, planted a garden reminiscent of the one I tended with Grandma Rose, and filled the space with items chosen solely for the joy they brought me. My relationship with Ryan deepened into something neither of us had expected. What started as professional collaboration evolved into friendship, then tentatively blossomed into romance. He understood the broken trust one carried and never pushed for more than I could give. Instead, he demonstrated reliability through consistent actions rather than empty promises. Relationships shouldn't be a constant test, he told me once. But when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. The wisdom in those words resonated deeply. For years, I'd ignored what Tiffany showed me, making excuses and giving second, third, 20th chances. Never again would I dismiss my intuition so easily. My career flourished in unexpected ways as well. The cybersecurity knowledge I'd gained through necessity became an asset in my software development work. I specialized in financial application security, helping to build systems that protected others from the very type of fraud I'd experienced. There was a poetic justice in transforming my trauma into a shield for others. Dad and I continued our careful reconciliation through monthly lunches and occasional weekend visits. He never stopped hoping for a full family reunion, but he'd learned to respect my boundaries. Karen remained distant, her maternal protectiveness toward Tiffany creating an impenetrable barrier between us. I'd made peace with that loss, understanding that some relationships cannot and should not be salvaged. As for Tiffany, news came in fragments through the family grapevine. She'd completed her court-mandated therapy and was apparently continuing voluntarily. She'd found a job at a small marketing firm and was, by all accounts, showing up consistently and doing the work. She'd ended her relationship with her accomplice and moved to a modest apartment she could actually afford. Were these changes genuine? I couldn't know for sure. The skeptic in me, the part born from betrayal, questioned whether this was just another long con. But another part of me, perhaps the part that still remembered the little girl who'd once shyly asked to borrow my colored pencils, hoped she was finding her way to authentic growth. 13 months after the attempted theft, a small package arrived at my office. Inside was a check for $5,320, the exact amount Tiffany had borrowed over the years and never repaid, plus interest. A simple note accompanied it. Debts paid. No strings attached. I deposited the check, half expecting it to bounce. It didn't. It was a small step, perhaps, but a step nonetheless. 2 weeks later, I received an email from her therapist, asking if I would consider participating in a restorative justice session. Tiffany was ready to make amends, the email explained, but understood if I wasn't ready to receive them. I sat with the request for several days, discussing it with Ryan and my own therapist. Eventually, I agreed to a carefully structured meeting on neutral ground with professional mediation. The woman who walked into the therapist's office that day was almost unrecognizable from the Tiffany I'd known. Gone were the designer clothes and perfectly styled hair. Her makeup was minimal, her demeanor subdued. She looked me in the eye briefly, then away, her discomfort palpable. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. "I know you didn't have to." "I'm here to listen," I replied neutrally. "That's all I can promise right now." The mediator guided us through a structured conversation. Tiffany spoke without interruption for nearly 20 minutes, articulating the thinking that had led to her actions, the justifications she'd created, the entitlement she'd nurtured. She detailed how she'd targeted my vulnerabilities, my desire for family connection, my willingness to help, my fundamental trust in people. "I chose to see her kindness as weakness," she admitted, "because acknowledging it as strength meant confronting my own shortcomings." There were no excuses, no attempts to share blame or minimize harm. Just a clear-eyed accounting of her actions and their impact. When it was my turn to speak, I described the ripple effects of her betrayal, the family relationships damaged, the trust shattered, the sense of safety destroyed. I spoke of the nights spent questioning every interaction we'd ever had, wondering if any moment of connection had been genuine. The money was never the point, I concluded. It was the deliberate exploitation of love and trust that I don't know how to forgive. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said, meeting my eyes directly for the first time. "I'm not sure I'd forgive me either. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, that I take full responsibility for it, and that I'm committed to never being that person again." We didn't hug afterward. There was no tearful reconciliation or promises of a restored relationship. But there was something else, a clearing of poisoned air, a setting down of burdens too long carried. "I wish you well, Tiffany," I said as we prepared to leave. "I genuinely hope you find your way." "Thank you," she replied simply. "I hope someday to deserve that wish." In the months that followed, I reflected often on that conversation and what it had given me. Not closure exactly, some wounds never fully close, but perhaps permission to stop picking at the scars. As my second year post-betrayal approached, I realized something profound had shifted. The anger that had once burned so hot had cooled to ash. The hypervigilance that had me questioning every relationship had eased into healthy discernment. The grief for what might have been had transformed into appreciation for what was. I decided to honor this evolution by creating a foundation in Grandma Rose's name, dedicated to supporting victims of financial abuse. With a portion of my savings, we established programs providing emergency funds, legal assistance, and financial literacy education to those rebuilding their lives after exploitation. The first fundraising event exceeded our goals by over 40%, with supporters from across the country joining our mission. Standing at the podium that night, looking out at the faces of survivors, advocates, and allies, I felt Grandma Rose's presence keenly. She had taught me the value of money, yes, but more importantly, she had shown me the power of resilience. Her legacy wasn't just the inheritance she left me, but the strength she'd helped me build, strength that had carried me through my darkest hours and into this moment of purpose. "Our worth isn't measured by our bank accounts," I told the audience, "but by our capacity to transform pain into power, betrayal into wisdom, and loss into legacy." The journey from victim to advocate hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been setbacks and dark nights when old patterns of self-doubt crept back in. But with each conscious choice to value myself, to maintain boundaries, and to channel my experience into helping others, I reclaimed pieces of myself that betrayal had threatened to take permanently. Today, I stand firmly in the knowledge that while we cannot control others' actions, we always have a choice in how we respond. Sometimes the people we trust the most will fail us in the most devastating ways. But that failure doesn't define us. Our response to it does. My stepsister gave me a phone to steal my savings, but she inadvertently gave me something far more valuable: the opportunity to discover my own resilience, to build authentic relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation, and to transform pain into purpose. That's a lesson worth far more than $400,000. Have you ever had someone underestimate you and live to regret it? How did you handle betrayal in your own life? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else going through something similar right now. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories, and hit that share button if this resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the people who try to break us inadvertently make us stronger than ever before. Thank you for listening, and until next time, trust your instincts. They're usually right.